Justification, Lesson 4, the progression of justification. Last lesson we began looking at Abraham and this matter of righteousness. And this lesson we continue with the same thing. We looked at the first part of Genesis 15:6, and he believed in the Lord. And now we're going to look at the second part, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he, God, counted it to him, Abram, not Abraham, Abram still, for righteousness. We understand that this is before Abraham became Abraham, when he was still Abram. So, by this simple act of faith, Abram had righteousness counted to him by God. I want you to get this clear in your mind. It says, and he believed in the Lord, and because of that, he, God, counted it to him, Abraham, for righteousness. It was not by being good, not by striving for good works, not by penance, that's doing things to make up for what you've done, to pay back, right? None of that. We don't believe in this idea of penances, doing things to try and bring God's favour on us, to make us favourable to God. It's not by penance. It's not by anything else at all but faith. And now, whose faith is it talking about here? And let's get this perfectly clear. It's Abram's faith, isn't it? And he, Abram, believed in the Lord. This is a wonderful truth, but there's even more than this. Righteousness is not by circumcision. Now, this promise of Genesis 15:6 is given to Abram while he is still uncircumcised. So it's got nothing to do with circumcision. Genesis 17 tells us of circumcision being given to Abram. Just go over to Genesis 17:5. Here, and we'll have a look. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abraham, but thy name shall be Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. Remember, we talked about this. His name was changed from Abram to Abraham. And this is many years after Genesis 15:6, where God said, and he believed in the Lord and he counted it to him for righteousness. And we see that as time went on, God gave the circumcision to Abraham, and this is why Abraham is called the father of circumcision. And when we look through the scriptures, and it talks about Abraham, when it's using that name, not Abram, it's talking about Abraham as being the father of circumcision. So, years after Genesis 15:6, circumcision was given. Now, it was given to Abraham, but he believed and he was justified when he was in uncircumcision. And it's very important that we understand this. This matter of righteousness is not brought about by circumcision, it's only by faith. Now, it needs to be understood that circumcision became the sign for the children of Israel of their national identity as time went on. It was built into the law, and it became so much part of their tradition and their culture that by New Testament times the Jews saw themselves as a nation as the circumcision. They called themselves the circumcision. They would say, we of the circumcision are Jews. In Acts 10:45, Acts 11:2, Galatians 2:6-9 and 12, Titus 1:10, all of these talk about Israel as the circumcision. They saw circumcision as essential for righteousness, but forgot that Abraham, the father of circumcision, was still Abram when God declared him righteous for his faith, and he was still in uncircumcision. And so circumcision isn't what brings righteousness. And we need to understand that first of all. The Jews said there can be no righteousness without circumcision. But Abram was counted righteous by God when he was uncircumcised. And so we see the error of that teaching. And then, righteousness is not by the law. The promise of Genesis 15:6 that we've looked at, and he believed in the Lord and he counted him for righteousness, is over 400 years before the law is given in Exodus. Now, a clear understanding of this matter is the basis for our perspective on legalism. People who say you must keep the law to be saved. Abraham had a son, Isaac, and the years went on. He had a son, Jacob, and the years went on. He had 12 sons, Israel, and the years went on. Joseph went down into Egypt, and then the children of Israel went down into Egypt. They were there for 430 years. And then they came out in the Exodus. Then they went to Mount Sinai, and then they were given the law. Right. And now, if the keeping of the law was necessary for righteousness, then Abraham could not have been righteous, as he was long dead when the law was given, wasn't he? So understand this. Righteousness is not by the law. Genesis 15:6 tells us that Abraham was seen as righteous by God simply because he believed in the Lord. It's clear that this matter of achieving righteousness is not what circumcision is about, and it's also clear that it's not what the law is about. That's not what they were put there for. Righteousness is not, and never has been, achieved by works, but always and only by faith. Now let's understand something here, and I want you to write this down. Of course, that faith, if it's genuine, will produce works. Right? Works will be the result of faith. But works can never produce faith. And I want you to write that down and to understand that where there is genuine faith, there will be works. That's a natural outcome of faith. But the works don't produce the faith. They're the result of the faith. And we need to understand that right from the start. So now we ask ourselves how this righteousness got to be Abram's. How did he get to possess it? And the scriptures are quite clear. It says, and he believed in the Lord, and he, God, counted it to him for righteousness. Counted it to him. This is the first usage of this word. That's how he got it. God counted it to him. So what's that mean? Right, well, counted is Strong's Hebrew 2803 and Strong's Greek 3049. Now I want you to take time out and look these two words up, the Hebrew and the Greek. In the Hebrew, the word is basically to plait. You know how a girl plaits her hair? Well, that's this word. Or to interpenetrate, to literally to weave. So we've got a cloth and it's woven. Right, that's counted, this word here. It gives the sense of imputation or reckoning. Now I want you to learn these words. Counted, imputation and reckoning. Right. In the Greek it's about taking an inventory or estimate, to reckon, to one's account, to impute. Now, to give you a better idea about this, in a sense, this is a banking word to do with banking, money, accountancy, right? I'll give you an example. You're in debt to the bank. Now, that means your account's in the red. You owe the money, right? You can't pay the debt yourself. And so the bank demands that the debt be paid. So what can you do? Well, there's nothing you can do. But you've got a rich friend and he goes to the bank and he pays your debt in full. He just goes in and he pays it. Right. He puts his money in your account. Now, he imputes or he reckons or he counts his money to you. Right? He puts it in your account. Now, it's his money, it's not yours, but once he reckons it to you and it goes into your account, the bank looks at your account and says, oh, you're not in debt, you're in credit. And so now you are free of debt and you're in good standing with the bank. Right, now this is exactly what Christ has done for us, not regarding money but regarding righteousness. He puts it to our account. He banks it on our account. We're in debt and we need righteousness. He has righteousness. He banks it on our account. He puts it into our account. He reckons it to us. He imputes it to us. And these three words go together. Counted, imputed and reckoned. And this is what it's talking about. Bringing the account out of debt into credit. So in this little verse, Genesis 15:6, we have the first usage of this word and also the first usage of all the English words used to translate this Hebrew word. Now, not only is Strong's Hebrews 2803 and Greek 3049, which I trust you've stopped and looked up and check for yourself, not only are they translated counted on many occasions, they're also translated imputed on many occasions. And I've given you a list of them here. I want you to just take the time out. We won't do it in the lectures just now, but I want you to take the time out and look at every one of these because every one of them is significant. Just read them. Get the idea of what I'm talking about. Remember the bank account and get these in your mind. They're very relative verses that matter when it comes to righteousness. And then it not only is it translated imputed and counted, it's also translated reckoned on many occasions, and I've given them to you here. So I want you to take the time out to look at these, particularly the New Testament ones. They're just so relevant to what we're talking about when we talk about justification. So we have this concept clearly put in place here in Genesis 15:6. Abraham, or he was Abram at the time, believed in the Lord, and he, God, counted, imputed, reckoned, right, put it to his account, reckoned it to him for righteousness. And so God put righteousness to Abram's account. Here we have a clear understanding of how righteousness is obtained. It's not by works of any sort. It's not by anything that we can do. It's simply by God reckoning it or imputing it to us. God gives it to us as a free gift if we believe. He simply credits it to us. It's a gift. He credits it to our account. He puts it to our account. But Abraham wasn't righteous. Right, now I want you to get this clear in your mind. But Abraham wasn't righteous. He was a sinner, and there is an account for sin. He, like us, had a bad debit account when the inventory was taken. Even after this account of Genesis 15:6, he still sinned. What about that? How could he be seen by God as righteous? Well, the answer lies in this word righteousness. And he, God, counted to him, Abram, for righteousness. Now, we have looked at this word in the Hebrew and the Greek. It's Hebrew 6666, and I wouldn't put too much store by that number. and Greek, 1343. In the Hebrew, this word is 6666 from 6663. So go back to Justification, Lesson 1, page 1, the first paragraph that we did. This word is about rightness, rectitude, justice, virtue, propriety. It's about justice. We go back to Lesson 1 and paragraph 1, and we see in the Greek it's a primary root, to be or to cause or to make right in a moral or forensic sense. Remember we looked at that. To cleanse, to clear self, to be, to do just, to be just, to justify, to do justice, to be or to turn to righteousness. From this word justification comes the word justice, so this is a legal term and concept, and we come back to that now. In the Greek, it's all that the Hebrew has, plus the matter of equity, implied or imputed innocence and righteousness. Now we know what imputed is, to put it to our account. It's talking about a just sentence and a just execution of that sentence, to render or to show as regards just or innocent, to acquit for Christ's sake, to be a judge or a judger, to be right, holy and innocent. So it's all to do with the legal definitions, right? So we've looked at those again and got clear in our mind about this word justification and righteousness. In the Greek, we go back to Justification Part 1, Para 2. We just looked at that. We see it's talking about equity of character or act, specifically justification, righteousness. So we see that righteousness is all about justification, and justification is all about righteousness. Justification and righteousness are inseparable. Now I want you to get that perfectly clear in your mind. Justification and righteousness are inseparable. They are interdependent on each other. They are both legal terms. To be righteous, justification must take place. There can be no righteousness without justification. Once justification has taken place, righteousness is a fact, right? It is a matter of position or standing. So Genesis 15:6 clearly demonstrates in practice what God set in place back in Genesis 3:21, doesn't it? Adam and Eve were guilty back in Genesis 3:21. God sacrificed the animal as a substitute and clothed them with the skins, and so imputed righteousness to them, put it to their account. Their part was to believe and accept this imputed righteousness as a free gift. They became positionally righteous. Right. It was imputed righteousness, put to their account. Now in Genesis 15:6, Abram is a sinner. He believes in God. Because of his belief, he comes positionally righteous. And it's exactly the same. And of course it won't change, because God doesn't change, does he? It is a legal matter. It's a matter of position or standing. It's a matter of justice and a matter of judgment. Now I want you to understand this and to mark these in. It's a legal matter. It's a matter of position or standing, justice and judgment. God, as the judge, brings out the account and requires settlement. Now he knows it's in debit that we owe, right? And he knows exactly how much we owe. When he asks for satisfaction, he, as the judge, finds that a substitute has settled the account on our behalf. And so he knows what has to be paid, and he knows that a substitute has paid that, has imputed it to us. As the judge, he can now only see that account as settled, just like the bank manager. Once the account's settled, it's settled. And if it's been imputed to us, it's settled. He sees us without sin, even though we are born in sin. He sees us without sin. He sees us just as if we'd never sinned. So we are justified. Because God can only deal